are the people in your neighborhood? In your neighborhood, in your neighborhood. Say, who are the people in your neighborhood? The people that you meet each day.
The one word I would use to describe this block is creativerse.
Eclectic.
Multifaceted.
A mixture.
Stimulating.
Longevity.
Fascinating.
Beautiful.
I'm Bill Dobbs, William Dobbs, and I was born in France, and I've lived in Powderhorn for 29 years.
My name is Rebecca Frost. I was born in Flint, Michigan, and I've lived on this block for 29 years.
My name is Vicki McVeigh. I was born in a small town in the extreme northwest corner of Minnesota, and I've been at my house here on Elliott for almost 13 years, since September of 2004.
My name is Henry Gomez. I was born in Creasville Springs, Texas, in Dimmitt County, and I have lived here going on 10 years now.
My name is Sam Gould. I was born in New York City, and I've lived on the block for 5 years.
I was born in Portland, Oregon. My name is Louis Campbell Gould, and I'm 9 years old, and I'm about to turn 10 on August 26th.
Great.
My name is Honora or Casey Baldwin Gould. I'm 7 years old. I'm about to turn 8, and I was born in Portland. My name is Esme, and how old I am is 7 and a half.
Jose Manuel Santillana. I've lived here for 2 years, and I'm originally from Central California.
Me Blumenshine, and I was born in Washington, TC, that's Tazewell County, Illinois. And I lived there, well, anyway, a long time. And then we've lived here, both of us, for 35 years in this house.
And my name is Mike Troutman, and I was born in Pennsylvania Dutch Country near Reading, Pennsylvania. And I've lived here as long as Amy has.
Well, I lived in the neighborhood already. I lived over in an apartment on 13th Avenue, and I had been in that apartment for a couple of years.
And I lived in a warehouse, actually a couple warehouses in St. Paul, and we, oddly enough, decided to get married, and then thought, gee, instead of living in different cities, we should actually live in the same city.
So, because he was living in his artist warehouse, and we were married, but we weren't living together.
So we looked around for places, and our original thought was to find a church or a warehouse or a corner store or something that we could use as a mutual studio.
I was looking for a dance studio. I was a full-time modern dancer, and we were looking for 3,000 square feet. And somewhere in there we got a realtor, and that we could live with. Like, we went through a lot of realtors. And this guy, he really got us, and he would let us go to a place like an old school or something and turn his back and look out, and we'd say, we have to vibe, and he let us do that.
He did, for 9 months.
And so then finally we couldn't afford any of these things, and like nobody had given us 3,000 square feet, which was on our wedding list. And so he said, have you ever thought of looking for a house?
Which we hadn't.
And
that's a radical concept.
I mean, we said no. So he said, well, let me show you some. So among the houses he showed us, including like a Park Avenue, big old wonderful thing, and numbers of houses, this was one of them.
And since Rebecca had lived in Powderhorn, we knew Powderhorn, we knew the May Day Festival we had gone to, loved that the area is full of artists and writers and poets and musicians and full of creative people and just a great, diverse, wonderful. It's the creative heart of the Twin Cities, really. So we considered this, and actually some neighbors said, hey, as we were riding around our bicycles looking, they said, you know, you could live here. And we thought, okay, maybe we will.
And this one we could afford.
We could afford this.
Back then it was a lot less.
Yeah. So it was a bargain, and you know, as they say, a fixer-upper, and we've been fixing it up ever since.
Or not.
It was the only house I could find that that had a fence for my dog, and I'd been living at my shop for almost about 2 years, and I figured it would be a little healthier for me to move out of here. And not only that, is I also grew up in the area. I used to play tennis at the Powderhorn tennis courts.
My parents died and I needed a bigger house. I lived in a little 900 square foot Craftsman on 39th and Portland, and I'd actually made an offer on another house, and when we did the inspection it was not so good, and my house sold the first day that I put it on the market, and so all of a sudden I needed a place to put all my mom's furniture, and this was the only one that had a dining room big enough. So
Part of what was motivating us when we moved here in 1982 was where can we make a difference by where we live.
Can I add to that? I would say, and at the time we were renting a place in the 2400 block of Elliott, so that as we looked around, we were looking for neighborhoods that were diverse racially and economically, and Powderhorn Park had that long-term reputation. So that
I moved here because I started grad school. I got accepted here to the Feminist Studies PhD program, and so that's what brought me here. Moving to Minneapolis, it's a huge change because living in California, it's predominantly Latino. And I grew up in a small immigrant town where it was about 90% Latino. So it was a big change for me. But you know, being here, coming from there to here, and seeing that there's other immigrant communities that are, you know, thriving, creating, you know, their lives and families and businesses. It just feels really nice, and I think that Minneapolis is a very beautiful city because of the different immigrant communities that it has.
I think it's more, this felt wonderful, and we feel really lucky that we were able to live on this block rather than we necessarily had the choice to live our lives on this block. It's more like maybe this block chose us rather than we chose it.
I've grown to love the people. Like, I mean, my heart is really knit with the actual people, and it's like a village for us now. And we've seen different generations of kids grow up, and they've kind of run through our house and through our yard, and in ways that now I can't quite distinguish that from the block. Like, you know, what is blockness and what is just like our village home. And then there's one of my things, which is the standard I have now, which is like one day, so I looked out, and there were some probably 20-somethings moving a sofa on 2 skateboards. And I sort of thought, okay, that seals it. From here on in, I'm spoiled. I could never live a place where I wouldn't look out and see that means of you know, movement.
Or on New Year's Eve, a spontaneous parade at midnight of a New Orleans jazz band, right down, you know, in the middle of winter when it's freezing cold, but the tuba's going and the brass band is going, and
Bugles
are
bagpipes,
going, bagpipes,
drums.
The interaction with all the neighbors and all the kids. Um, they know me as the guy that lives in a corner, and everybody's so friendly, and uh, it's just great. It's a great neighborhood to live in. But this is a wonderful neighborhood. The neighbors are, it's a jewel. It's the neighbors are pretty incredible. I absolutely love it here. I don't think I could be anywhere else except for Paris, but that's not good. That's not a bad analogy or good comparison. So, you know, Powderhorn in Paris.
I would say you can get a lot of friends. I have a friend who lives so close to me. He just lives in a yellow house over there.
One, simply for my kids, there are so many different kids on the block, and also on the 3200 block. And they're all with one another all the time, and that really kind of connects houses to one another. They're always running back and forth, and at one time or another, we'll have like 10 kids in our house, and while at times that can feel kind of overwhelming, it also feels really wonderful. I also love the fact that there have been people on this block who have lived here for 40, 45 years, and there have been people who have lived here for 6 months. I guess that's, in talking about longevity, I feel like there's a long cultural memory of this block in particular, and at least from my own experience, people share that with one another, and there's a way to talk about the changing social landscape of this block in relationship to our neighborhood. And I think there's something not just powerful about that, but really important in terms of thinking about the future of our neighborhood together and how we live with one another, and how we can work with one another to create a neighborhood that listens to one another.
The other thing on a bigger scale in terms of changes, I tell my friends from outside the area that immigrants saved our neighborhood because of while Lake Street is a block or 1 to 2 blocks away, there was a period in the 80s and early 90s where it felt like Lake Street was all porno shops and theaters
it was
and
white
massage
flight.
parlors.
We watched the places shut down, and up to and including Sears.
Yeah.
We watched the businesses pull out of Lake Street and head out to areas in the suburbs and such.
And so now with the Latino immigration and African and all that entrepreneurial spirit that exists along and all those businesses along Lake Street, that's a spillover positive to our to this block.
I enjoy living close to Lake Street. So one of my favorite things to do here, I think, and one of the things that I do to treat myself is to go to East Lake Plaza. So like once a month or every other week, depending on the time of the year, I go to East Lake Plaza. I go get a haircut there, and then I treat myself to some tacos or tamales or Mexican food. So I think just living so close to all these Latino businesses reminds me of home. And so,
Well, despite everything that we've been saying, there's always been a kind of apartheid. Which is to say, whether it's renters and homeowners or middle-class white people and people who are moving through. So even with all this kind of like liberal good intention, which there's a lot of, and a fair amount of sort of organizing from the various states in which we live, it still is not a seamless tapestry or anything remotely like that. And so, while we've had genuine relationships with all different human beings, the block can live under a kind of illusion of itself, and that to me is painful.
I think that's the biggest issue I would change, is that when there's economic disparity, and this is a larger cultural issue, people get desperate. And when people get desperate, they do desperate things, as the saying goes. And so I guess what I would like to change is like really providing, and I think arts do this, music does this, and all, but providing ways for folks to channel their desperation and their desire to make better life for themselves and to improve their lot economically, and to have, whether it's the city or some kind of way to sort of guide that real desire and real need to improve things. And we've seen that in Powderhorn Park. They have a music producing studio down there. So someone can actually go down there, and there's free equipment for the kids. They can use that, and they can actually learn a business, what they can do with it. And I think that's a good example of a way to provide a positive outlet. And we need more of those. I think another piece, though, I would change is that I thought it'd be great for each block to have a community meeting room or center, not just one in the neighborhood, but every block. So there's a safe space. If someone needs shelter, they can go to. We can have, potlucks, community meetings, kind of like the old town hall. But
You've talked about tools, like things
Yeah.
owned in common.
so have tools on the common, snow blowers. We don't need to have everyone have, their own shovels and rakes and snow blowers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We can. One lawnmower should be sufficient. So I think more of that would be better, to really, so people get to know each other, come together, work together, and provide for the common good.
Since I've been living here for 2 years, I don't know too much of the neighborhood, but what I do know is that some of the issues that I run into that for me feel like gentrification, right? That feel as though there might be some criminalization happening with people of color. And so like for me, it worries me because there has been instances where I've seen black and brown people being criminalized, and I think that comes with living in a neighborhood where that's a changing neighborhood, but also that there is no cultural understanding of like what it means to be living in a Latino neighborhood, or what it means to live in a POC neighborhood. Latino neighborhood, that's normal. You see somebody selling corn on the street, and we buy it from them. They're a part of the community. But for others that they're not used to things like that in their neighborhood, and they're scared of that, and some of it comes from xenophobia and racism, and so that threatens them. And for me, living in a neighborhood where people can sell street food and be safe is important, and I fear that might not be the case sometimes because people have that fear.
Well, one of the concerns that I've had is how do we achieve and maintain a balance between a neighborhood that feels safe and is safe without driving property values so high that it doesn't remain affordable to a range of people of different economic means, because that's what adds the diversity.
one of the things that I'm aware of in, you know, not crime really, is the slime grease that's in the air. I think from bituminous, that facility on 28th Street. I'm not entirely sure. But you know, if you see orange snow there in the wintertime, it's a pretty good bet that that's the stuff that I'm cleaning off my porch today, and every day. That I do worry that of the toxic brew that is here.
Yeah, I mean, really, I feel in a kind of luxurious swoon, really. Like, the kids, you know, have been born next door, and I'm in love, we're in love. You know, I mean, it's true. You know, like, I can see them come, and my whole chemistry changes, and I'm just like, out, you know, I'm on the phone, oh, excuse me, you know, you know, so, and, you know, there's Henry and Dick across the street, and now Chastity, and, you know, so, I mean, we know the ones surrounding us in a kitty corner, and John and Euron, and, you know, down the street, Vanessa. And so, I mean, I'm just saying some of the names, just to say, you know, I kid my friends who are just like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, or, you know. So that's really, feels really just fortunate.
It's great. I have a great rapport with all my neighbors, and they sometimes, you know, because they know that I'm capable of doing a lot of things, they'll ask for help, and it's great to be asked for help. You know, and if it's something that I can do, I certainly will. But it's nice that they can come to me and ask, and if I can help them, I certainly will.
I guess I just appreciate that I live in a block that I feel like we're talking to one another. Like we'll scream at one another from one another's porches. We'll walk down the street and see Henry on the corner and talk about when we're finally gonna have a barbecue. And it just feels like it's not isolated.
One of the neighbors formerly here moved away. They now live on a farm, a family farm, 2 hours from here, and so we have moved to them. We have a place that we squat on their property.
An old trailer.
Yes, yes. So you know, in some ways, the neighborhood has grown that way, and that reminds me again of Roy McBride's statement in defining Powderhorn. He says, well, you know, really, there's just Powderhorn and Greater Powderhorn. So now this farm is part of Greater Powderhorn, and we're hanging out with our neighbors.
Well, and that's a good example of how it feels like this block has a spirit that goes beyond the length of time people live here. So look at Roy and Lucinda, who lived maybe on the block for 10 years. You know, and Roy's passed on, and that spirit is still, to me, present and alive here.
I also, in kind of a utopian sense, always want a little bit more conversation and more interconnectedness and cooperation, and would love that for the neighborhood as a whole. I think blocks in general can work as really great models in regard to how to practice a social ecosystem. So maybe, I mean, without specific examples, just like a little bit more defined interconnectedness. But in general, the anarchic interconnectedness is pretty great, all things considered.
Maybe like less litterers here and more people who help the environment and make it more beautiful, like more flowers.
I would like it to be more of a forest. Everywhere there would be cats, dogs, and a whole lot of pets.
Well, my current thinking has to do with the political situation we're in. Wouldn't it be cool if we could be a sanctuary block, you know, and that we could be a model for others? Because obviously, sticking yourself out as a sanctuary actually jeopardizes the people that you're seeking to protect by saying, "Here we are," to the forces that would like to harm them. But you know, it seems to me that we do have some cool motivation here, and that given the right kind of organization and cultivation of that, we could be part of a bigger effort that stands in the face of hate and harm.
So we met in a political theater background and stuff, and have done a lot of radical theater, and so one of the things we brought to the table here is we just started one time on Halloween dressing up and doing kind of banter and like a whole show, and it kind of caught on, so we've been doing it every year ever since. And it's gotten to be, on some years, like a huge production. Like the whole front porch was a pirate ship, and I mean, we build it, you know. And so, and we've gone through phases, like I said, different energies, where maybe I don't really have the energy, or we have something going on in our lives, or, you know, but we've so far done it every year.
And a different theme every year, not, you know, buying some commercial Halloween stuff at Kmart or something like that, but we create an original set.
And it's like a
characters.
multi-layered theme, which sort of plugged into what's going on in the world, but you may or may not get that depending on what age you are. And it's become a labor of love, and part of the rule is kind of like, you know, we stay within our budget, and so like sometimes it has to be made out of something in the house, like, you know, there's a ship in the house. Who knew that, you know? And so and there might still be one in the attic, and, you know, like too many props. But anyway, we kind of put stuff together, old stuff. Here's my like favorite story is we for many years did like champagne and fireworks. Our neighbors are often out of town, and they let us sit and we'd watch from there. And that intersection, while we still had the fireworks and Powderhorn, was just like, whoa! I mean, just like it's
Filled
like
with people.
Times Square, you know. Really, I mean, it's like streaming of all different walks of life, and I love that. And so, one 4th of July a couple years ago, a young boy suddenly like looked over his shoulder, and this was not a boy whose name I knew, and said, oh, Mom, that's that house! And, you know, that's that house, and that witch! And, you know, not that we're usually witches or anything like that, but there had been. And, you know, and that's it! And it was the ownership and the feeling, like, I felt like there was a way he seemed like he felt safer in that moment. Mm-hmm. And he knew where he was from, and like somehow we had contributed to that, and it meant like everything to me.
My dog, my Lola. I had a daughter that my youngest daughter, she was going to Cordon Bleu, wanted to become a pastry chef, so she was staying with me, and so it was great to have her with me. And, you know, then when right before she graduated, she ended up going to Chicago and got a job at Moto Restaurant. So the day that she was getting ready to leave, she came home with Lola as a puppy. And she says to me, well, Daddy, I just didn't want you to be alone and not have anybody to love you. And I'm like, well, okay. So that's Lola, and so Lola's been with me, and she's great. Can't get her to stay on a leash. She just hates it, doesn't want to be controlled, and yeah, I get it. So that's Lola's super friendly, never barks. She does do a lot of sign language, but, you know, I don't know where she picked that up. I get it. But she's great. She's a great dog. And everybody has great dogs around here. And everybody knows your dog before they know you. And I'm still trying to remember people's names, but I remember their dog's name.
When the neighbors across the street decided to keep chickens and were going around and asking for all the neighbors' permission, I thought that was great. I don't think the chickens lasted very long, but
I think about a year after we had been living in the house, and the girls, they're twins, who were about 3.5, I believe. I'm asleep. The neighbors next door had been having a birthday party. There were different neighbors there at the time. They were having, they had a big jumpy castle, and it was just a big, long, fun Mexican birthday. And Esme really did not want to leave the party. She was just having the best time ever. But she's 3.5, and it's time to go to bed, and the party went late. And I'm asleep. It's probably about 11:30, and I hear our neighbor from across the street, Tom, in our living room, calling my name. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And I knew I locked the door, too. So I go down, and he has Esme in his arms. And I'm like, what is going on? Apparently Esme couldn't get to bed because she just wanted to keep playing with the kids next door. Got out of bed, opened the door, she's in her underwear and nothing else, and goes to the neighbor's house. They had, at that point, even those kids are asleep. And she's just looking around. And another neighbor, I think one of the parents from next door, saw her, picked her up, but thought that she was Liv, who lives across the street. Brought her over there. Thankfully, they woke up. And they're like, no, she lives over there. So Tom, the door was open because Esme opened the door. So Tom brought her over here. That was a good bonding moment about how we're looking out for one another. It was both terrifying, hilarious, and also it brought me a lot of warmth, all of these contradictory feelings all at once.
And the connecting is really what makes a neighborhood. You can build structures that enhance that, and you can have events that enhance that and all that, but basically it comes down to people interacting and it's so life enhancing. It gives such depth to life and significance, and again, we're in a political period where people are so fearful, and partly people are fearful because they're all alone, and they don't know that people around them are good people who share some of the same values and are there for them.
And I would say that I am grateful for the opportunity to live on this block, and for being able to live here for 35 years and hopefully a number of years more, and for the other people that have been, are, and will be part of this block. I am grateful.
Oh, who are the people in your neighborhood? In your neighborhood, in your neighborhood. Say, who are the people in your neighborhood? The people that you meet each day.